Now we have the honor to invite a beautiful young researcher. Please, if you can introduce the researcher, Dr. Abiola Olomola.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Abiola Olomola. Mrs. Abiola is an accomplished IT, GRC, and cybersecurity leader based in Dubai, UAE. With 2 decades of experience, she spearheads the development and implementation of robust IT frameworks that align technology strategies with business objectives while mitigating cybersecurity and operational risks. Her expertise spans strategic IT governance, cloud security, AI risk management, and regulatory compliance with standards such as ISO 27001, NIST GDPR, and PCI DSS. Her innovative approach and strategic leadership have earned her numerous prestigious awards, including the Most Strategic IT Leader of the Year award from Middle East Gen AI and Analytics Awards, the Leader in IT Governance, Risk and Compliance Award from Global Women Leadership Awards, and recognition as one of the top 5 remarkable women making an impact by CIO Today. She has also been acknowledged by the CX4 Time, Empire Magazine, and Impact Leadership Awards for her transformative contributions in IT. Abiola holds a Master of Science in Information Technology and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. As an active member of IEEE, ISACA, EC Council, and PMI, she continues to drive organizational excellence and inspire industry-wide advancements in IT, GRC, and cybersecurity. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Mrs. Sabiola.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Kiran, so much for the introduction. And it's been a pleasure and an honor being in this wonderful cloud of intellectuals. I've learned a couple of great ideas, a couple of great things on this presentation. So I'll be sharing my screen right now, and we're ready to go.
Have you shared your screen?
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
All right, so my name is Abiola Olomola, and I'll be, I've been hearing a couple of different scenarios within AI, neural networks, and all that. So it's very good that we have this new technology in place, very, very essential. It makes our lives easier and it makes us do our work efficiently. It introduces a whole new ball game of how we can effectively and efficiently make operations, seamless with little and no intervention from human. Now, you bear with me that if we have a new technology, back in the days where we're talking about cloud computing, we're talking about cryptocurrency, different innovations and different ideas that come on board. But agree with me that if we don't put the best practice in place, the best policies in place, putting structures in place, then any risk, because with any new technology, there are a couple of inherent risk around it. So any risk around that, if you don't put enough structure, enough policy in place or practices in place, to secure the entire infrastructure, to secure the entire application, things might go wrong, right? So it's not, we don't want things to go wrong. Okay, so I think I don't need to go into who I am. Karen had made a very good justice to that. So my name is Abiola. I have master's degree, have a bachelor's degree, and have a couple of certifications. I currently completed my leadership and management training in Harvard Business School, and I have gotten a couple of awards. So how do we make AI both powerful and also trustworthy? So we've been talking about the powerful part of it, or what AI can do, the great thing AI can do, all the neural networks, all the new advances we're doing, how to combine the entire human power with computing, capabilities. Now, how do we make sure that it's trustworthy? Okay, so we just don't want to give the entire whole world or our entire processes, to a machine in quotes, and we don't put enough structures in place, or we don't put enough safeguard in place, policies in place to be able to guide that. So we'll be talking about a couple of definitions. I'm sure we all know the definition, so I might not really go into that. Then we'll talk about why governance is important, because governance is important in every structure, even if it's political structure, economic structure, the business world, the academics world. Governance is very, very important. Even in our homes, right? We all understand, the structure of governance. Then we'll talk about a couple of frameworks that we've been seeing from EU, from US, ISO frameworks and all that. Then a couple of recommendations. So definition, I'm sure different presenters have already done this justice to this. So artificial intelligence system performing tasks requiring human intelligence, and which requires definitely a lot of data, right? The core techniques, machine learning, deep learning, NLP, reinforcement learning, and all the applications that we can do, or how we can apply all these techniques, in what we do. So moving on, so what's the importance of AI governance? So this is a $100 billion plus investment. So all over the world, total, from the experts in the world, US, the UK, the China, all these countries are globally, in total, we have a global AI investment exceeding over $100 billion on an annual basis. So that shows that it's a huge investment, and organization, entities, countries are trying to investing money for how we can get economical value from it. So AI poses risk such as algorithmic bias, privacy breaches, and systematic vulnerability. So we have a couple of risks around that. So even though we've investment a lot of money in it, there are a couple of biases, a couple of privacy issues that we have around that. Okay, and another importance is the alignment imperative. So we need to make sure that we have effective governance that ensures AI aligns with societal values, human rights, legal obligation, which is very, very important. Okay. So we understand what AI can do. We understand the extent at which what AI can do, but we need to make sure that it's not infringing on any human rights. It's not infringing on your privacy. It doesn't have any, it's not going to, lead to any legal issues in future. Okay. So this is another one that has to do with big tech companies. Specifically for big tech companies, it has about $300 billion, projected. So this is in future, projected for 2025 and beyond. Okay. And the US private investment, they've invested a couple of, amounts within the AI landscape. So what are key stakeholders in this? So we have the government, so enacting regulations and national AI strategy. So most of the time we see all these regulations that are coming on board is governments that actually enact them, right? So the likes of the EU AI had, the likes of the US AI, a couple of documents that have been released by the US government. Then we also have industries that are developing AI products that implement corporate governance and ethics policies. So now, kind of, is the government that is responsible to be able to, enact regulations or regulations in place. Okay, while we have the industries that develop the AI products, the likes of OpenAI and the rest. Okay, and make sure that they have a couple of corporate governance in place and ethics policies. Then we have the civil society and the NGOs that advocate for transparency. So they've seen a couple of risks around this AI. So we have a whole lot of NGOs and civil societies that are coming up advocating for transparency. So down the line, now I'll be showing us the regulations, the center points within most of the regulation we'll be talking about has to do with transparency. So what do we know? How do we know the algorithm that you say this AI is going to execute this task is doing it the way it's expected to do it? How do we understand that all the privacy is complying with a couple of our privacy laws like the GDPR and co and the California Consumer Protection Act? So also we have the academia that conducts research on and on and on, research about AI, cloud, AI, neural networks and the likes. Then we now have the standards bodies like the likes of the IEEE, ISO, and the likes that establish technical and socio-technical standards for trustworthy AI. So the first one we're talking about is the OECD AI principle. So that was adopted in 2029. It's kind of like the first intergovernmental standard. It has a couple of 5 value-based principles, a couple of recommendations, and it was updated last year. So now the OECD principle talks about the inclusive growth, sustainable and development and well-being. So it talks about how AI should benefit people and the planet by driving inclusive growth. It talks about human-centered value. So remember in my first presentation, majority of these policies or regulation is really centered about human rights. It's centered about transparency, accountability. So you probably hear me more saying almost the same value across board. Then transparency, there should be transparency and responsible disclosure around AI systems to ensure that people understand the outcome, okay? There's also something called, we don't want to over-rely on AI. So even though AI, you're automating your entire processes, end-to-end processes, and AI is executing that, we all know that agentic AI is coming on board, or it's even on board, right? Where it's zero human intervention. So in that case, you want to put some stopgap or some controls in place to ensure that even though it's executing everything end to end, you want to do a couple of stop check, a human coming to check at different processes. Is this the expected outcome that is required? So those are the controls that you can put in, that we can put in place to ensure that any inherent risk doesn't crystallize. Then we have robustness and security, safety. So all AI systems must function in a robust, secure, and safe way throughout their life cycle. Then we have the accountability and audit. So the organizations must be accountable, okay? So we have questions like, I was in a conference like almost a month ago that we're asking that, oh, how do you do it infringement rights, right? So probably you ask the AI to, do a couple of images, and probably he copied an image that has a trademark, something that is trademark, right? That has there's an intellectual property. So how do you address that? So those are the things that we need to be addressed within the policy. Okay, so we now have the EU AI Act. It's the first comprehensive legal framework. So this is like a framework where organizations in the EU, organizations that either have operations in the EU, or where your AI software is being used by EU citizen, okay, or where you are importer. An importer is someone that procures the AI application, okay. So the AI Act, the EU AI Act was enacted, and it's the first comprehensive legal framework for AI worldwide. It aims to foster trustworthy AI. So continue to hear the word trustworthy through a risk-based approach. So what they did is, for any AI system, they've categorized them into like 4 different sections. So we have the lowest one is the low risk. Then from there we have the medium risk, then we have the high risk, and we have the one where it's unacceptable. So what that means that under no circumstances should you build an AI to be able to do such capabilities. So that is how the EU AI had be able to categorize all the systems. So the minimal risk or the low risk has to do with voluntary code of conduct. The limited risk has to do with transparency obligations. Then the high risk has to do with strict conformity assessment. Then unacceptable risk means you are not, under no circumstances, all those AI applications. So application that has to do with infringing on human rights, that has to do with biometrics, doing a thorough scan of biometrics, checking people's social security cards. So those type of applications are not accepted. Okay, so the tiered model ensures regulatory bodies match the potential harm. So anything that has to do with that is classified under the high risk, a high, there has to be a conformity assessment. Data, there has to be something called data assessment. So making sure that all the data being used in the entire AI system is thoroughly assessed, thoroughly categorized. There has to be risk assessment, risk management. Like you need to actually document, do something called risk assessment, document all the risk prevalence, then assess the risk. Okay, once the risks have been assessed, so you've probably identified all the risks. So a major risk can be data privacy issues. Another major risk can be hallucination, for example. Okay, so once those risks are identified, okay, so you now categorize the risk. So is this a high risk, or is this a medium risk, or is this a low risk? Now, based on the classification of risk, based on the impact and the probability of the risk, then you now infer controls. Oh, what controls do we need to put in place to be able to mitigate this risk? Okay, then you need to make sure that there's human oversight in place. So a human has to actually, do some sub-checks within different categories, and all those needs to be documented based on the EU AI Act. So all those risk assessment, data assessments needs to be needs to be documented. So whenever the regulators come to check that the organization is complying, so they need to make sure that all those documents are in place. And then at the end of the day, they can probably do a stamp for the organization that, oh, then your application is AI certified. So it's called CE marking, so that you've met all the conformity requirements. So moving on, we have key obligations and requirements. So for the EU, for the high risk AI system, okay, I think I've already discussed this in the previous slide, but it's fine. Implement a robust risk management, ensure data quality, also maintain human oversight and provide detailed documentation, very important. Then transparency requirement, the users must be informed when interacting with AI. So with your high risk system, so remember we mentioned earlier, in the unacceptable, you're not even allowed to be able to develop AI systems that will infringe human rights, right? So for the high risk systems, has to do with probably if you are building an application, it's like a scoring application for academics. Okay, you are building an application where it scores you students. Another example of a high risk based on what we have documented in the EUAI is employment. Any AI system that has to do with employment, where the candidate is being scanned, like, oh, this candidate fits this requirement or not, is a high risk AI system. Okay, so like that, those are examples of high risk AI systems. So innovation support, make sure that, so in this case, the regulators, based on the EU AI Act, regulators need to have sandbox in place. So I think mistaken by, I think 2 years after the regulation is being enforced, each country within the EU, they need to provide sandboxes for testing of the AI. When you need to develop your AI, so they need to test your AI application, especially for SMEs. The enforcement, now for the unacceptable risk, okay, if there's a case where an AI is built around that has to do with any infringement of human rights, the company is liable to able to pay fine up to 35 million euros, or 7% of the global annual turnover, for serious violations. Okay, so they are serious as that. For the iris is about, I think, 15 million euros, okay, or 3% of their global annual turnover. And for a medium risk is about 7 million euros. So, or 1% of their global annual. So what are the timeline that we have for the EU AI Act? So 1st of August 2024, that was when the EU AI enter into force. Then on the 2nd of February, sorry, 1st of August 2024 was when AI enters into force. Then 2nd of February 2025, it's when the prohibition and AI literacy and enforcement comes into effective. Now, 2nd of August 2025, that's when governance rules for general purpose AI starts, okay? And now 2026 August is when they start enforcing that organization needs to be compliant. So which means right from now up until 2nd of August 2026, organization has the right to be able to put all these measures in place. So they need to do, this AI that they've developed or already operational. What kind of risk is this? Does it fall under the medium risk? Does it fall under the high risk? Or it's not even acceptable, okay? So is this time that people or organization needs to start putting measures in place, depending on the requirements for each risk level of application. They need to start documenting, putting enough documentation in place. So when it comes 2nd of August 2026, the regulator can easily come in to do a check and confirm that organizations are complying. August 2nd, 2027, then we have extended transition period for high-risk embedded products. So this is not a cast in stone timeline based on what we had from EU, okay? It could change, so constantly they will start also be bringing up clarification, because there are a couple of gray areas within the EU AI Act that needs some clarification, and organization must map their AI system to risk categories and establish compliance frameworks. Policymakers need to refine sector-specific guidance for harmonized global AI. So let's look at the NIST. So we move from so actually dwell more in the EU AI Act because it's actually the regulation that enforces, and it has in case the organization doesn't conform, it has there's a fine attached to it, so it's enforceable. We have the NIST AI risk management framework. It has to do with mapping, identifying, and assessing the AI risk. So this specifically talks about how do you manage the risk within AI. So that's what this framework is all about. So it has to do with mapping and identifying and assessing the AI risk, measuring, so analyzing the risk, or what kind of risk is it a high risk, is it a medium risk, is it a low risk, based on the probability and the impact of the risk. Then implements risk control. So if the risk, for example, is a low risk and the impact to the organization is not high, the organization can actually choose to accept the risk. So depending on the organization's risk appetite, okay, that's how they can implement risk. And probably if it's a risk they can transfer, and so we don't want our organization to do it, let's outsource it, the risk, so they can actually transfer the risk or actually put measures in place to mitigate the risk. Then improve, enhancing processes continuously, then also establishing governance structure. So that's so this framework actually deals with how you manage risk within your AI application. So we have UNESCO ethics recommendations. So it has to do with safety and privacy throughout your AI lifecycle. We need to make sure, we all know that AI, the thing driving AI is the amount of data you feed it, right? So, and based on data, you also need to make sure that there's no infringement to people's privacy. So within your entire AI, so that is why we have data quality management within the AI assessments. Throughout the AI lifecycle, multi-stakeholder approach, which means so it shouldn't just be probably your engineering department or your AI department that is involved. So you need to involve a couple of stakeholders team to be able to interpret the correct regulation that the organization is resides in. We have your governance team that are able to confirm that in case anything goes wrong, this is what is going to happen to the organization. These are the hits, or this is what is going to affect our bottom line. You have your GLC team, governance risk and compliance team. You have your IT. Okay, we also have your data warehouse team also needs to be involved. So it's a multi-stakeholder approach where you involve a couple of your stakeholders to be able to be involved in the process. And this was adopted November 2021. So still on the UNESCO recommendation. So what UNESCO is saying is that number one, do no harm, which is very important, and it's kind of reflected what we talked about in the EU AI Act that has to say there are some AI application that it shouldn't even be be designed, right? And classify that under the unacceptable risk. So do no harm, there has to be safety, security, and privacy, multi-stakeholder governance, then responsibility. Then we have the IEEE AI ethics standards that has to do with global standards, socio-technical guidance for AI ethics, certify AIED program, how you do certification for your autonomous system, then give open guidance for a trustworthy AI. So in detail, so it provides a comprehensive guidance for trustworthy true global socio-technical standards that addresses both the technical implementation and the social impact consideration. Now, looking at this life cycle coverage, the standard covers the entire AI life cycles from the design. So there's something called security by design, privacy by design, so governance by design. So what that means is that you shouldn't wait until when you want to deploy your AI. That's when you need to start thinking of, oh, what are the security things I need to put in place, or what are the privacy requirements I need to put in place, right? So you need to start from the point where you're conceptualizing the idea of the AI. So all those factors need to be considered: your security, your governance, everything needs to be factored, also your controls. So everything needs to be factored at the point of conceptualizing, the idea. Then free access. So IEEE actually offers a free access program to, provide support, industry implementation, policy developments, making sure all this come into one place in a very good place. We have a WES AI Governance Alliance where we have the cross-sector collaboration. So people, different organizations, different countries and different sectors, they come in together to be able to collaborate, doing research and policy guidance, and also confirming best practices, all the best practices that needs to be in place, and also strengthening the governance framework. So it focuses on skills development, how we can share resources. So this is more like, oh, let me know what you're doing around AI within your sector, and let's come together to collaborate. So it's more like that. And let's see what technical controls we need to put in place to be able to self-regulate AI within the AI framework or within the AI landscape. Then we have the CSA AI model risk management. So what this does is that it looks at the risk. So this actually focuses on the risk, similar to the one that I talked about in the ISO one. It looks at risk monitoring, oversight, whose responsibility is it to be able to look at the risk within the AI system, the risk mitigation, the risk measurements, the risk, identification. Then we have the ISO IEC 42001 AI management. So this ISO 42001, is the entire framework for AI management. Okay, so what it does is that it looks at it's kind of the first AI management standard. So this is more like a standard, right, that is established in 2023 for global governance. So it looks at also data management focus, the quality of your data, how is it? How are you establishing data owners? How are you establishing data stewards? Okay, in case the customer said, oh, I want my data to be deleted, or is there a process in place at the point of getting this data from the customer? Are they informed that, oh, this system is data you're giving us, you need to put a couple of information. The users need to know that you're collecting the data and they have the right that data should be deleted. So more like consent from the customer also needs to be obtained. Then you need to perform a systematic risk assessment. So basically, what are the technical best practices that needs to put in place? Data governance. You cannot overemphasize your data governance. It's very, very important. So you need to make sure that a top-notch quality assurance process is in place around your data. For sensitive data, what are the things you put? Do you encrypt the data, for example? Okay. Do you anonymize the data? Okay. Data in motion, data at rest, the encryption method that you put in place. Okay. Who should have access to the data, and so it's only people that are needed, that access is needed, that should be granted. So you need to also implement something called least privilege. Only people that need the data access should be granted. Data loss prevention, DLP, needs to be implemented or needs to be in place. So those are the things, those are the best practices. So provenance tracking. What that means is that how do you track data within your AI system from start to finish? So within you've automated your processes, for example, how data is being used from end to end. So that needs to be tracked, and that needs to be in a log somewhere, and it needs to be documented. It's even part of the EU AI Act. So all your data, for example, you need to put logging mechanism in place, your lifecycle management for the entire, AI system from end to end. How do you ensure that all the information are put in place and all the information are working as expected? Then transparency, you need to make sure you are transparent. We don't want to deal with something called black box, right? So because one of the key risks around the AI system is black box. People don't understand the model you're using, the algorithm that is being used. So it's something that you need to provide the code whenever it's being asked, so that people can review and do a audit around it. Okay. So privacy and data protection. So what this means, that there has to be privacy by design. I mentioned that. So you need to embed data minimization and protection early in the development, which is very, very important. Collect only only data that is necessary is what you should collect, and just for specific purposes. Then you also need to obtain consent from your user. Make sure that user gives explicit user permission. So, and also federated learning for data anonymization to reduce risk. So protecting your data, the data that is being used for the AI system, is very, very important, because these are users' data, right? So privacy by design principles, embedded data minimization, and protection early in the AI development process. So all AI systems must align with GDPR and regional data protection, the likes of California consumer protection rights, shaping. Okay, so this is specifically for EU, and making sure techniques are put in place to reduce privacy risk, while also at the same time maintaining AI functionality. So this is very important. So what I've discovered is that now that we have these policies or regulations in place, a couple of people have gone back to go and update their data policies, right? Because there's a thin line in between your data management and also your AI. So you need to, all those policies, a couple of policies, even some cyber security policies also needs to be updated to be able to reflect this. All right. Thank you. My system hung for a while. So security and resilience. So we have testing needs to be in place to model your vulnerability. You need to ensure that security, supply chain security practices help to vet AI hardware and software dependencies. So making sure you put enough security in place, within your AI system. Very, very important. Okay, so not only are you supposed to achieve that, you also need to make sure that security breaches you are eliminating security breaches, right? So what we have here is a landscape of your global AI policy. So we've seen something from the EU, also from the North America, Asia. So this is just like the landscape within the AI policies. So accountability and oversight. So let's talk about accountability and oversight, right? So you need to clearly define the roles. Now that we have a couple of regulations in place, right? What do the organizations, what are they expected to do? So number one, you need to establish defined roles. So for example, we've seen a couple of high-valued organization or banks in this case, they've appointed something called Chief Risk Officer. Oh, sorry, Chief AI Officer. So CAIO. They were appointed Chief AI Officers that will oversee the entire AI system within the organization, and also teams in place, like the people expected to all those stakeholders I mentioned earlier, the legal team, the GLC team, the developers, the AI developers, the people that are supposed to test the AI systems before it goes into production. So all those teams needs to be clearly defined within AI policies, and it's good to have a AI policy that addresses the regulations that the organization reside in. Then having audit trail, I think I talked about audit trail, very, very important. So audit trail. So all what your AI system is doing needs a log needs to be generated and saved somewhere in case anything goes wrong, because there will be a couple of incidents that will occur within your AI system. So you need to make sure that you have logs. All logs are enabled to ensure traceability and third-party validation, of the AI systems through comprehensive documentation and external assessment. They need to have another body that does a review, an independent review of your entire AI system. Remember, I talked about earlier about transparency. So how can we achieve transparency? It means probably a third party or someone else, an independent person, had come in to come and review the model or review the algorithm, review the output of the AI to make sure that it was designed as intended. Then establishing ethics and governance body, very important. You need to have like the same way in where we have steering committees. So we have to have a body that oversees, like a governance body that oversees the entire AI system. So it could be someone within the board, some set of people within the board specifically should oversee the entire AI system. So establishing committees for ongoing oversight to provide guidance, for ethical considerations and governance. So the CIO can be on that board. The chief AI officer can be on that board. The chief legal officer can be on that board. So, but there has to be a board, a committee responsible, for an oversight of the entire AI. Okay. So let's talk about transparency and explainability. So having comprehensive documentation in place is very, very important. Making sure that we have explainable tools, okay, also very, very important, and user-centric explanations, also very important. Then we have data privacy and protection. Your data minimization needs to be in place. Your purpose limitation also needs to be placed. You need to make sure that you get users' content, very important. Then GDPR compliance, or complying with the required data privacy regulation for that area or for that country or for that continent needs to be in place. And then also regional regulations. So security and resilience. So making sure that we put enough security in place. A couple of testing needs to be done. So this is linked to cybersecurity. So we all understand that even though we are using AI, even the cyber criminals too are using AI, right? So I need to make sure they'll test for vulnerabilities before. I mentioned earlier that security by design. So put enough security in place. So at the stage of testing, do a couple of testing. Stress load testing, security testing, vulnerability testing, testing that the code is secure, testing that there are no inputs, there are a couple of inputs validation, okay, and there's no SQL injection, doing all the checks based on the OWASP. I'm not sure. We have the OWASP top 10 vulnerability. So we have a couple of vulnerabilities that have been defined by OWASP. So all those, tests needs to be done to make sure that you have a robust and a well-secured AI system. So we have your red team exercise. So red team are like the hackers that try to simulate any hack, okay, within your AI system. So they come in like the bad guys to come and do a lot of hacking attempts within the entire AI system. So the AI system needs to be subjected to that before it goes into production. Then also you're vetting your AI dependencies, because there are a couple of probably your AI system is integrating with another AI system. So you need to check there's an API integration with another thing or another application. All those needs to also be checked. Then third-party risk mitigation, managing external vulnerabilities. So majority of the organization, they outsource this particular AI system or solution to another third party. So you need to make sure that there's a risk around that and controls in place to mitigate that risk. Monitoring, auditing, and compliance. Ensure continuous monitoring. You need to set your KPIs in place. Risk indicators and threshold. So you need to also, for your risk how do you ensure that this risk doesn't crystallize? So the way you can know is to make sure that you're checking for your risk indicators, and there's a threshold. If your particular risk if the KPI reach a particular threshold, you know, oh, something has gone wrong, for example. So maybe, for example, you have your sensitive data in your data, okay? Probably the level at which you have your the sensitive data within your pool of data is not, let's say, encrypted, for example, or is not anonymized. What that means is that there will be a threshold. So if the threshold is, let's say, to me, I would say all sensitive data should be encrypted, or you should anonymize it, right? So if your threshold is saying 1, for example, okay, which typically should be 0 to me, okay? So if it's more than 0, then there's an issue, right? So that way you can actually monitor it using your KRI. So that is a risk, key risk indicators. Automated alerting system, in case anything goes wrong, who should be alerted, right? And I think based on the regulation, in case anything goes wrong, okay, I think in the EU AI Act, you should notify the relevant authority within 72 hours, if I'm not mistaken. So you need to alert, so your system, probably your compliance team, or the way the rules have been defined, a couple of things needs to be alerted in case anything goes wrong, so they will see how they can easily mitigate, address it using, there has to be also, you need to implement. So remember I mentioned that now that AI has come on board, you need to probably go and update your policies, update a couple of things. So one major thing that needs to be updated is your incident playbook, okay? We all know in cybersecurity, if there's an incident, for example, maybe there's a cyber attack, there has to be a playbook that say, oh, there's a cyber attack. Number 1, what do you do? Number 2, what do you do? Oh, probably you quarantine the system, for example, and you quarantine the system, take it offline, and you investigate the issue, for you to come back, for you to be able to restore your operation. Probably there's a backup somewhere that you probably need to restore and start putting processes in place. So that's like what your playbook, is specified. So what that means is that you need to also have a playbook for any AI, for any risk that has to do with AI. So which means you have a new playbook if you don't have it already, that needs to be in place. So that's, once the alerting system is done, then you now initiate whatever it is that has been defined in the playbook. Then also the performance tracking dashboard, how you track your performance, how your AI is working effectively to be able to track performance. Then external certification, you have your ISO 42001 for AI management, so the organization can decide to certify on that. They also have the industry specific standards, your AI, your third-party verification, your compliance attestation. So in case the organization wants to certify that their AI is compliant based on a particular regulation. Transparent reporting, there will be a couple of regulatory disclosure requirements, especially in the EU AI Act, because once it takes effective in 2026, August 2026, there will be a couple of regulatory requirements and disclosures. Stakeholder communication is also very important. I've talked about incident reporting protocol. Who are the people, in case there's an incident, who are the people that needs to be notified, and what are the things that needs to be done? So public transparency and statements. So in case probably there's an issue with an AI that has to do with privacy, okay, so we need to make sure that you need to be ethical enough, okay, to be able to inform the public, oh, this was what happened and this was how we're able to resolve the issue, and probably there was no risk, or there was no issue around it. So also those needs to be in place. Then so emerging threats, we have generative AI investments. So about 33.9 billion in 2024 funding was done for generative AI, sustainability application, climate modeling, resource optimization, so that the things are actually coming. We also have things like agentic AI also. So we have the EU AI Act, okay. So I think I mentioned earlier that EU continues to bring a couple of revisions. I also mentioned that there are a couple of clarification that needs to be done based on the AI. So there's also come and to do a couple of revisions. So harmonizing with international standards, adapting to technological developments, refining risk categories, okay? So before earlier, so now I think there's more specific on how those categories are being refined, and more examples on the AI application that has to do with the risk level. So AI for sustainability, raising focus on climate, environmental and social impacts, also climate change mitigation application, resource optimization solutions, environmental monitoring system. So these are the emerging trends or the future direction that we are seeing for the AI for AI. Then also education and workforce. So within the education and workforce, we are adopting AI competency frameworks for students and teachers, because there are a couple of questions are now coming on board. Now that for schools or in education that you give your students, previously, probably if you give them a paperwork, they probably go and do a research, thorough research, and start referencing. They will take a couple of books that have been written by scholars and start referencing, doing their own research. Now, you can give that particular topic, you can just throw it into ChatGPT and say, let me write a paper on assessment of the bio nanotechnology within the entire landscape. ChatGPT will give you a very good, write-up with references. So how do you now manage that? So there are a couple of policies that are now coming on board even in the educational space on how those needs to be AI needs to be embedded, within the educational workforce. So moving on. So what are the recommendations and next steps? So I think I talked about almost like 6 frameworks. Okay, so how do you integrate the frameworks? So depending on the organization or where that's the organization where you see yourself, okay, you just to pick the regulations that applies to you and how you can mirror it, or how you can match the regulation to have your own policy in place. Okay, also engaging stakeholders, very, very important. Prioritizing your investments, also very important. And maintaining regulatory watch, also very important. In case anything goes wrong, what are the things that needs to be done? Multi-framework integration, combining these entire frameworks or regulations that has to do with, or that has to apply within your landscape for a robust governance. That I talked earlier, for example, you have the EU AI Act, then we have the AI risk management framework, the one for the ISO. So you can use the AI management framework to how to describe or how to mitigate risk, your AI risk. Now, using the EU AI Act, all the things that have been, all the requirements that have been embedded there, you can, so it's just for you to pick which regulation that applies to you to be able to suit your need as an organization. So map complementary elements across the frameworks, identify organizational priorities and gaps, develop integrated implementation roadmaps. So remember, for EUAI, for example, all organization within the EU or organization that EU citizen uses the AI system, they need to be compliant, in compliance by 2026. So what that means is that the organization also needs to put processes in place on how they need to, address that before 2026. Develop integrated implementation framework. So that's be a framework, for example, identifying roles, putting policies in place, enacting the policies, ensuring that all the risks are being identified and mitigated. Then also stakeholder engagement, foster policy development across the sectors, establishing multidisciplinary working groups. So you need to have a group that work, to ensure that you have good AI governance in place. Very, very important. Investment priorities, so allocating your resources to transparency, risk management, and capacity building. Then regulatory watch, okay, ensuring that you have established your policy monitoring. So continuously checking for if there are any new updates from any regulation or any regulation within the sector at which you operate. Then at that time, updating your policies. So most of the time, well, 100%, almost 100% of the time, all the policies should be there has to be like an annual review of your policies anyway. So, but in case there are any updates, then it calls for a review or an update of the policies to be able to align with the required regulation. So thank you very much for listening to me. I think we have like 5 more minutes if I'm not mistaken. So I'm available to ask any question. Thank you for your time.
Hello, congratulations, Dr. Olama, for your beautiful presentation.
Thank
We
you.
enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.
Hello,
Yo,
Dr.
I'm with
Olama.
you. Do you have any question? Thank you very much, Professor Danayok.
Beautiful presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. And please come to New York the 12th of October. We're going to
Okay.
have a boost of happiness.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful lecture.
All right.
So
All
what
right.
do you think for the future? What are your plans for the future?
So right now I'm still in I'm connecting from Dubai, UAE. You never can tell. I can be in New York in the next 3, 4, 5 months. So thanks for the invitation. So Fabi can maybe Kiran can send me an email concerning that with the details, and I'll love to give my feedback.
Wonderful. Congratulations for your beautiful lecture.
Thank you
See
so
you
much.
soon.
Thank you. Thank you.